Hello everyone, my name is Barbara and I would like to welcome you all to our latest Knowledge webinar episode. In this week's episode, Persuasive Architectural Visualization with FlyingArchitecture. Even with a quite unusual workflow which consists of Rhino, V-Ray and Photoshop, FlyingArchitecture established itself as one of the most recognized rendering companies in the CGI world. Let's find out what the hype is all about. Today's presenter, Mateusz Nadecki, started using Rhino as a student of architecture, but alas, he missed websites offering assets for visualization. Therefore, Mateusz decided to run his own online repository. What started as a simple blog evolved into a fully professional portal offering many features to its user, as well as visualization services. That's how FlyingArchitecture was born. The rest is history. Before we get going, here's an overview of what we do at Knowledge. Knowledge is one of the largest online software for design stores for design software. We offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. Put us to the test and come visit our webpage at knowledge.com. And for more daily software news and limited time promotions, pay a visit to the Knowledge blog and follow us on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. Coming up next week, find out how to differentiate your products with aesthetic design with the help of Autodesk Fusion 360. Last but not least, today's webinar is free and is being recorded live. If you want to watch this or any webinar episode, just head over to the Knowledge YouTube or Vimeo channels. And now I will leave the screen completely to Mateusz so he can dazzle you with this fantastic visualization. Mateusz, are you ready to rock and roll?
Yep, I'm here. Can you see the screen?
Let's see. Yes, we can. All right, the baton is yours. Enjoy the show, everybody.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So hello everyone, this is Mateusz and it's my honor to speak for the whole team of FlyingArchitecture. First of all, I would like to thank to everyone involved in our activities. It's an honor to have you on board. I guess they are attending the webinar too, so guys, in case you do, my infinite thank you belongs to you. Secondly, I would like to thank to the whole team of Knowledge, of course. I'm in contact with these guys from the very beginning of my CGI career, and I remember posting my first 3D works on their Rhino Jungle website, and believe me, those were really hideous. I'm surprised they didn't block my account the very first day, but thanks to this, Rhino Jungle became my very first source of inspiration, and it was the most active Rhino community back in those days. Also, my first legal license ever comes from Knowledge, so thank you very much. And thank you, Barbara, for organizing this online event, which I was and I still am a bit afraid of, as I really hate being recorded. So let's hope this will break the barrier, and maybe thanks to this event, we will bring some more online webinars or even video tutorials to you in the future. The last but not least, thank you all guys attending this webinar for finding your time to sit behind your computer and watch this session, in which I will try to cover most of what you asked for in the comments area on our website or under the post on our Facebook page. Considering the amount of information you require to hear and see on this webinar, I had to write down the schedule for myself, which I'll try to follow. Otherwise, we would spend here the entire day and night, as these topics would take hours and hours to be talked about properly, and you know, we would not even scratch the surface. So in the end, I decided to show you some breakdowns of one of our latest projects, which is this forest house you can already see on my screen. It was created with the purpose of becoming a tutorial for our website, which you will be able to read shortly, as I'm still working on steps descriptions, so stay tuned. But today I'll show you some highlights important for handling such a project, from some quick modeling tips through some basic material creation, but mainly I will do my best to cover the post-production, which interests most of you. So let's start with the model to launch this session. Okay, so here's the model, which is already prepared for the final rendering for myself. Some of you people ask me when do I feel the model is ready for rendering, for the final render and for post-production. I would say depending on your post-production skills, it can be right after creating a simple box in clay. It really matters what you really need to reach in post-production. You can always go in two ways. One of these ways is a full 3D approach, or the second way is a full 2D approach, which is the post-production. And there are several companies, the leading companies. Some of them are doing mostly 3D. You all know these people. These are people like Bertrand Benoit, I don't know, Marek Denko, Juraj Talčík, Peter Guthrie, and so on. And on the other hand, there are some other companies which are creating as well amazing visuals, and most of their work is done within Photoshop post-production. So it's really hard to say which way is better, and it's really hard to say in which part of the work it's better to stop working on 3D and to start working on post-production. You really have to feel it in your workflow. You'll have to try to create several visualizations, let's say mostly in 2D, mostly in 3D, and we will have to compare if it's better to add 3D trees or 2D trees. It really depends on you and depends also on your skills. I will show you in our session how to avoid really long render times and how to avoid using a lot of 3D assets and using 2D assets from photos mostly in your visualizations. But first of all, let me show you, for example, how do we handle some of the basic modeling tasks in here. For example, I decided to show you the windows because I think these windows might be very interesting for you as we are trying to reach a lot of detail also in 3D if possible, because we never know when our client will ask us to create some other views or maybe some close-up and so on. So I'll just invert the selection and hide it. So I just isolated this object within my 3D scene. So as you can see, there is some decent detail. Let me try. Yeah, okay. So there is some nice detail created in here. This is not complicated. This is very quick, very fast, and you can do it within a couple of seconds or minutes. And let me show you how you can handle such a modeling in Rhino. So let's just create the outline for the window first. In this session, I will not care much about the real dimensions. So let's just eyeball some of these dimensions. So first of all, what I created is the rectangle, and this rectangle is representing the outline for the new window. As a second step, I'll create the section for the window. So let's say, always mind, I'm having the project option in here which is enabled. So that means I'm not going to draw into a 3D space, but I'm always staying in a 2D space. Okay, let's create some random detail. Okay, first of all, it's okay just to have it like this, and then it's always possible to edit it later. If you just enable the control points by pressing F10, you can select any of these, you can move any of these control points, and you can edit the shape at any time. So it's really easy to edit it later. Okay, as the next step, it's important to add some fillets, is because we want to have some nice specular reflections on the edges, otherwise we wouldn't get these reflections in there. So we will just use fillet command. Anyway, as you can see, I'm using the commands. It's quite faster for me because I was migrating from many 3D softwares which I used before like, I don't know, I used Cinema, Blender, 3ds Max, SketchUp, and so on. And these icons are always misplaced in different versions, or even in a different versions of the software itself. So let's say this new software layout in Rhino 5, it's not really important for me because I mostly use the command line and I try to type the commands. So I take the fillet. Okay, as I can see, I chose a really big radius. Okay, 1 and 0.5. So I'll just create some more fillets in here, like that. Okay, and so on. So this is how you create these fillets. Why is that important? I already told you. It's to get the proper reflections and proper detail. So let me move the section in here. Okay, as I can see, it's downscaled, so just make it a little bit bigger so we can see how it works. Always try to keep the real dimensions, so this should be like 10 centimeters high, while the window should be, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 meters by 2 meters or whatever. So let's take the section and move it, disable the project, and move it somewhere onto the outline. And as the next step, we are going to create a sweeping command. So sweep 1, so we will take the rail, which is the outline, so select it. Then it's asking to select cross-section curves. It's this one, as I told you. So select the cross-section curve, OK, OK, and hit OK. And that's it for the, that's almost it for the window, of course. If you go to rendered mode, you can see we are already getting some nice detail in here, which would be good later for the rendering. Let's go back to shaded, and if you have a look in here, if I delete the section curve, I can still see there is a seam of the surface. So what happens? Let me also delete the outline, the curve, delete, okay. So what I have in here, it's a closed poly surface, which is really important. What happens if I explode this poly surface? I'll get set of surfaces, vertical surfaces in here, in here, in here, and in the bottom, it's split in this part where I had the section. So what I usually do, as I want to keep the model really clean and nicely editable, I just delete the bottom part. Then I join the top part, join the side parts. So as you can see, it's already open poly surface, all of them. As the next step, I can use the command which is called cap. If I hit cap, you can see it became a closed poly surface. So once again, if I go back, move it up, and if I use cap, as you can see, there was the cap created. So cap to close the surface, and it becomes a closed poly surface, and the same with the sides. Okay, and as the last step for this window frame, I'll just mirror it using the middle point in here. It's in here, like that. Okay. So it's recreated back in here without the seam which was there when I created the first frame. Okay, as the last step for this frame, there would be the next step, which is filleting the edges of the connection in here. So let me fillet edge command with the radius of 1, should be okay. Let me try that one. And I guess we don't need to fillet it in the middle in here to create an artificial detail inside. So it's okay just to leave it here. Okay, and depending also on the details in here, it should be done flawlessly. So let's see. Okay, it's auto-save, and I'm creating the scene inside the original file, so maybe it takes some time, which I'm sorry for. Sometimes it might happen that you get some problems in these edges, as for example, you may use really large radius for the small details in there. In that case, it's okay just to lower the radius, let's say to 0.5 millimeters and so on, and try it once again, and it should be done flawlessly. Okay, it's always good to check out the surfaces if it's closed poly surface. This is a very important part, and the reason why it's important is that if we do not have closed poly surface where it should be, we would get open poly surface, and that means that poly surface would have some holes in itself. And we do not want to have holes in the poly surface, as there would be some light bounces coming inside the object, and that would mean we would get some not really nice effects inside the rendering, like some light splotches leaking and so on, and it would happen around the edges. So in this way, if you always select the object, always check out closed poly surface, and always closed poly surface, and only if all of these objects in the scene are closed poly surfaces, just then be satisfied with the scene and just then go to the rendering to avoid all these unnecessary problems you may get. Okay, let me see the rendered mode. As you can see, the detail is already pretty nice. Yeah, I would say I'm pretty satisfied with it. And as a last step, it's okay just to add the window inside and the glass pane. So let's just create a simple box, get inside. Okay, like that, and put there the glass, and it's done. If you just group these objects and group these objects together, it's easier for mapping later on. I'll show you also directly how to map groups like this for better details. So let's back to the render mode. Okay, for the glass, I'll only create a very simple Rhino material with some transparency in it. Okay, so I can see it's already transparent. Let's see that in there. So let me apply the material. It should be, yeah, okay. Shade it. I'm going to show. So I'll just take the material from here. Okay, it's layer. There's a really nice icon in latest V-Ray release. There is this tab which is called V-Ray Extra, and there you can see there is this icon which says V-Ray Edit Material. That means if you select the object and click on that icon, it's going to take you directly to editing of the material itself. So let me just click on the icon. I'm going to select the object. Okay, I want that one. And as you can see, I'm already in here. So let me just hit preview. I just want to make sure all of my textures are okay. Seems okay. So let me just hide this part. And if I select the frame, apply the material to selection, I'm going to make sure it's working in a rendered mode. Okay, for some reason I cannot see it. Oh, I know what's happening. The reason why I cannot see that, I've got not a simple bitmap in here. I've got a color correction where I'm desaturating the texture. So first of all, I'll just create a simple bitmap material, just the standard. And I'll take the location from here. Okay, and let's go back to the diffuse bitmap. I'm going to take the texture. Okay, I'll select again the frame, apply material to selection. So as you can see, the material is working now, but the mapping is wrong, of course. Yeah. So as the next step, I'll disable the isocurves. So I just remove some of the lines in here, and I keep only edges. And as a next step for mapping, I'll create the box mapping. It's pretty easy, just create a box, doesn't matter how big it is, and we are going to change it. So select these vertical lines, then click on the show mapping in here. So it's going to show you the mapping widget in there. And now, as you can see, you can freely move it, and the texture, and the texture on the surfaces is moving with the widget in real time. So you can easily rotate it, and as you can see, we are already getting some nice and realistic mapping on the windows. Okay, this should be maybe okay, but as I can see, there is some seam texture there. So let me just scale it up a bit. Okay, move it down. Should be okay now, and let's see the surface. Okay, looks okay now. By hitting escape, we will just cancel the widget while the mapping stays as we set it up, and then just do the same for the horizontal lines, and take it in here. Okay, this should be okay, and just scale it up. Let me check it. Okay, it looks okay. So using this very simple method, in a couple of minutes you can create really nice detail for the visualization, and even if your client asks you to make a close-up, let's say through the window, you don't have to be ashamed for the really simple geometry you've got there. As you could see, with the really simple steps, you can do some really nice and detailed models. Also, if you just want to quickly adjust sorry, if you just want to quickly adjust the size of the window, remember, never scale the windows up or down, never scale these frames, because if you scale it, you can see that, if you scale it, of course these vertical lines are going to get distorted because it's scaling them in one direction. So, how to avoid this? Go to the top view or front view or whatever, and go to this Solid Tools panel in here, and there is this little icon which says Move Edge. So if you just select the edges, and if you move them to the new location, the window gets shorter, and all the proportions were kept the same. So remember to use the Move Edge, and never ever scale the windows up or down again. You are always going to get a distorted geometry, which is not good and not realistic. Okay, so this should be it about the about some details in a model. I'm going to delete it. Going back to shaded mode, I'm going to show you how the model looks like again. As you can see, there is some repetition on the cantilever in here. How is this done, and how can we keep the effectivity while creating something like this? Let me just copy one of these glass boxes out of the place like this, okay, and I will move it up as well like that. Right now I use the command which says block edit. That means all of these objects in here, all of these glass panes around the cantilever, all of them are blocks. That means whatever I do with this single geometry is going to be applied for all of these glass panes in there. And this is very important for me because, for example, when I was creating this project, I wasn't really sure how the cantilever is going to look like in the end, and how this mounting system will work. Let's say I don't know it yet, but I can still play with it. So for example, if I just want to make it a bit different, I'll just take these volumes in here, move it into the middle. It's not really important what you create in there. You can create a new geometry, you can remove the old geometry and so on, and I'll remove these ones so you can see that. I'll remove these, delete. I hit OK for the block edit pop up in there, And as you can see, oops, sorry. And as you can see, all of these geometries were updated. So that means the unnecessary volumes from here, from the edges, were removed, and I got some new volumes into the middle. So that means in this way I can really flexibly change anything at any time. For example, if I already created the final rendering of the scene, and just then I decide to change the system of mounting these glass panes, I can always do that, and it's not a problem. And for example, it's also good for one case. Let me block edit once again. So if I've got a problem, for example, with the performance of the computer, and let's say if you are creating the scene on your laptop and it's not that powerful, remember to use a lot of blocks and to use them effectively. For example, for filleting and chamfering edges. As you can see in here, I did not use any fillet or chamfer because I knew I'll be working with the scene also for a couple more days, and I'll keep adding and adding the details, so I didn't know how much detail I will add. So I decided to keep the geometry simple and add the fillets later on, which showed up as I forgot about it in the end. So that's why I can fillet these edges right now. So I'll use just 1 millimeter, and sorry, not these edges, only the glass pane. So at any time I can fillet the edges and I can add the detail. You'll be able to see this also in the post-production, which I'll open shortly. I had to create the spaces in between glass by hand in post-production, because I forgot to create the fillets in here. So let's hit OK, and as you can see, all of the other blocks were updated as well. So I just created the detail only for the final model, which I didn't have to wait for while creating the scene. So as you can see, there were some questions about the cantilever, that it's not realistic. The architecture would not be able to handle such a large cantilever, and but I'm asking these people if it would be fun if we do only possible architecture. I don't really think so. That's why we also created some flying houses, because it's just fun to create. So this is just a personal project, so why not to play a bit with it? And anyway, I had some concept for some more views of the house, where I wanted to approach it with a photographic approach, and I wanted to match some edges together. If I hide the ground in here, you will see that I wanted to match some edges together, so the cantilever matches always one side of the house, like that, as you could see. So this was the concept. Anyway, let's go back to modeling. As you can see in here, you can see there are some conifers in here. They look kind of weird. You may ask why. The reason is these are proxies. These are not the real geometry in here, and this geometry won't be rendered like this. I'll show you what's going to happen. Oops, sorry. I'll ungroup it. Okay, so I've got the tree separated, and if I hit render, let's see what's going to happen. Instead of these random triangles in a viewport, you will see a complete tree. So what's happening in there? It's reading the tree from the external reference, so that means I don't have to load these millions of polygons into the viewport. I'm pretty sure most of you are really familiar with proxies, and you may use them a lot. I would just like to give you a suggestion. Always try to import the geometry into the scene check out the rendering, if it's going okay, if all the textures are fine, if the materials are applied correctly, and just then create the proxy object. How is it created? It's very simple, of course. If you have the geometry in here, let's say we have a sphere and we want to copy it 1 million times in the scene. There's this little magic button which says import V-Ray proxy or write V-Ray proxy. So with the right button, I'll just write it. I'll save it as a sphere. Okay, it's asking me some options in here. I'll just click OK for now. And as you can see, the sphere was replaced with this fancy object. But if I hit render, you'll see how I can see a complete sphere in the rendering. And this is a really nice thing to optimize the scenes. Recently, like 2 or 3 days ago, it was 2 days ago, I finished the scene with a small skyscraper where all of the geometry behind the windows was real in a viewport. I mean, all the beds and dining tables and chairs and sofas. These all were geometry in a viewport. Of course, without proxies, it wouldn't be possible at all. So that's why I had to create proxies out of all of those objects and place them behind the facade. Okay. What is important for the rendering? There are many factors you should be aware of course, but there is the internet is full of these tutorials and these step-by-step tutorials. So what you should follow, what not to forget to enable, disable, and so on. So you can just find this tutorial. I'm not going to waste this precious time because we have only 1 hour for this webinar. I'm not going to waste it on V-Ray options because there are tons of options you can set up. Very important for you guys if you want to work on a serious post-production is to enable some render channels. In this case, I enabled all of them, but of course you don't really need all of them. So in the end, sometimes I just deselect some of these and I don't work with them anymore. So if you just hit the render button, oops, I didn't mean to run the render now, but never mind. Okay, let's wait a minute. Okay, what is important is to check that all the render channels you selected in VFB channels in here, they are all loaded in here, and you can always switch between them while rendering, so you can check if these channels are okay, if you need to adjust something, and so on. For example, if your render is noisy, you can always check out, let's say, reflection channel or GI channel, which of them is noisy, and then you can go back to settings of the scene and adjust either the global illumination settings or reflection of materials and so on. In this case, I'm going to wait for the render and I'm not going to check out these problems. I'll jump directly to Photoshop and I'll show you some tips and tricks over there. So let's cancel the render. Oops. Let's go to Photoshop. So what do we do as a first step when opening the post-production in Photoshop? We go through File, Scripts, and load files. So scripts, load files into Stack. I remember a couple of years ago, I'm not really sure if Photoshop already had this option, but I was loading them manually, channel by channel, into the canvas. So it was quite time-taking. But now we can easily go to the folder, post-production, to the render, to the final rendering, which we saved in here in HDR. Always keep in mind to save the channels in HDR to get the best possible quality for post-production. And if you hit OK, as you can see, I didn't want to wait for these trees to be rendered, and it's okay because I already knew that I'm rendering these trees only to get some realistic shadows on the facade and reflections on the facade. I never keep the 3D trees in a scene because I know they are not as realistic as the trees in the photos. So that's why I didn't even finish for them. Sorry, I didn't even wait for them to be finished. So as you can see, there is still this gradients map rendered and not the final rendering. So as you can see, there is the alpha map in here, which was rendered later. So I'll just import the sample PSD which I've got in here. By the way, you can download this sample PSD from our website, which is there for free. It's in between tutorials for the hierarchy in Photoshop. I've got it on my desktop, and I always load it for the new file. So what I do, I open the scene, select all the channels, all the folders in here, and drag and drop them to our scene. It's automatically loaded in there. Turn that off. And as the next step, is very important, is to go to image mode and 16 bits, because we are still in 32 bits and we want to use all the options of Photoshop, because as you can see, Photoshop right now is not offering me all of the adjustments. If I want to access them, I need to convert the rendering from 32 bits to 16 bits. So let's do that. I don't want to merge the scene. Okay, so it's in 16 bits right now, and as you can see, I can already access all of the adjustments. So as a first step, I'll just categorize these layers into the folders, and I take the files, move them to masks, okay, and as the next step, I need to use the exposure adjustment, and I need to set the new gamma correction value from 1.0 to 0.45, which is done after every single import from rendering. This is getting our render back to the values as it was in a V-Ray frame buffer. So once this is done, we can just play with the other adjustments. Sometimes we can just need to enhance the light or increase the contrast, brightness, and so on. It doesn't really matter right now. In this way, you can really easily adjust also some very important details. For example, if you check out in this part, the wooden shingles, these are a little bit burned right now. So, for example, you can just use the post-production with a bit more sense, as I did with these two adjustments. So just delete it, and if you'll be creating the curves, just don't overact the part of the curve. Just increase it a little bit so you don't lose the detail in there. As you can see, I rendered the facade with the displacement just to get a really nice detail, as you can see in here next to the window frames. To be honest, we don't use displacement at all. This is a very rare case of using displacement in our works. We usually try to avoid using the dynamic geometry like displacement or proxies and so on. But in this case, as it was for the tutorial, we use that for the facade. But mostly, this would be easily replicable with some basic post-production steps, like, for example, masking a bit of the wood texture in there. The reason why we would choose the post-production over the displacement which is rendered would be maybe saving the time, because also this displacement thing and also proxies, they prolong the rendering, of course. So some of you may not have time for waiting, or they just don't like these effects and so on. Okay. What is also important for you as CGI artists is to have a lot of photos. For example, in our case, as you can see, I've got a folder which is called Photos, and in there I've got some categories like nature, skies, people, road, and so on. And in these categories, I've got subcategories like grass, forest, field, and so. This is always done for better access, for faster finding of for proper texture. So, for example, if I will want to use, let's say, tall grass, I'll just go to the folder which is called tall grass, and I will use that one. So you can easily move it to Photoshop, or you can either directly move it directly to the scene, or move it in here and then copy only the needed part like that. Just copy it, and I will use it for the edit bit part in here. Create a new group in there. Oh, I already have the structure in there, so I'll just put it to the grass. Paste. Okay. If you just decrease the opacity, you can easily place it somehow in here, like that. Just edit the size. Okay. Label. And as the next step, it's important to select, of course, several photos. In this case, as you can see, I've got there are little slopes in there, so I'll be forced to use some more photos. I'll need to find some more photo references which are suitable for my first concept in there. I'll show that to you in the post-production in the other file. But what is really important is proper masking of the photo. So we'll just create a mask, and as a first step, I can just take the basic brush. I'll remove the edges, so with the full opacity in here, I'll remove the edges like that. And if you just want to recreate the edge to look more natural, you'll have to select the proper brush. So I already imported some brushes in here. Anyway, if you want to know how to create your own brushes, for example, something like this, there is a tutorial also on FlyingArchitecture how to create these brushes. So feel free to open it up, and it's for free, of course, so you can follow it and create your own brushes. What is important when we create a new layer in here is to show you that if I create the brush tip, you can see it's always the same. This is not something we want. So if you select the brush in here, sorry, I'm somehow missing the brush. Okay, this is it. So this is the brush. And also, if I make a brush stroke, as you can see, it's completely uniform, and this is something I don't want. So first of all, we need to enable shape dynamics and scattering like that, which is not working by default because it's not accepting the fact that I've got my tablet connected to the computer for some reason. But anyway, you can increase or decrease some sliders in here, which are, for example, size jitter, minimum diameter, angle jitter, and so on. And for scattering, you can enable the scattering and, let's say, play with the count. And if you just create the line again, you can see the brush is already scattered. So this is how you create the edge for the grass, for example. So let me delete it, disable the layer, go back to the mask, and as you can see, I can already paint the edge for the grass. Oops. Let's say like that. And this is a very simple approach which can be used for creating these details. Like that. Okay, of course, there should be more photos to be placed in there and so on. And also, not the best photo was chosen to be placed in here because this is supposed to be the road in here. So let me just open the file which is dedicated to post-production in here. and I'll show you also how to work with the adjustments, which is more important for the post-production. Okay, in this case I selected the photo which is not really suitable for this position. It's because of the perspective, but what is more important to know is that you should always keep in mind that the sunlight should fit the rendering. So in this case, as you can see, the sunlight in the photo is coming from the left side, while the sunlight in the rendering is coming from the right side. So in that case, I'll just transform it and flip horizontal. This should work for some cases, maybe not for this one. And you would also need to create some adjustments. Flip it so you can fit the colors. As you can see, it's already better, but it's still not it. So let's go back here. So this is the rendering which was created from the scene as I showed you before. And what is really important as a first step when the gamma is corrected is go to masks, take the alpha and copy, and you'll have to create the mask. So just create the mask for the group where the rendering is situated. Click into it, paste it in there, and it's masked. And as you can see, behind the group which is called render, I've got the group which is called background, and that means all the trees in here in the background can be still moved in any direction, in any way, okay, like that. So I can always play with the position and so on. And it's still happening behind the house. So this is the really big advantage of Photoshop post-production, that you can play with any channel at any time, with any layer. You can move it, scale it, remove it, and so on. Let's have a look quickly at what I did in here. By the way, usually for our post-production, there is a really extensive variety of tools used in here. Like a lot of edit layers like grass, trees, and skies and so on, but there are a lot of adjustments for each of these layers. Just don't be scared when you see the structure like this, because it's very, very simple. It might look complicated, but I will show you it's really simple. So once you create the basic structure with the render in here, and you adjust the exposure as I showed you in here with 0.45. Then you can start playing with some adjustments. So as you could see, I just enabled brightness, then there is some contrast, some selective colors, and some hue saturation. So desaturate it a little bit. Yep. In here, as you can see, what happened, there is a lot of blue tones in the glass, in reflections, so I decided to remove them. And it's not done via mask, and it's not done via the general slider in here with the saturation. If you notice in here, there is the drop-down menu which says master, and if you click into cyans and blues, you can always move the sliders for each color separately. So I took the cyans and move the slider to the left for the saturation. As you can see, the original should be much more saturated, but I desaturated it just to remove the blue tones out of the render. It's because the HDRI by Peter Guthrie, which was used for dome light in rendering, is being reflected in the windows in there. So I want to remove it because the house is situated in the middle of the forest, so it's not logical to have the blue tones reflected anywhere in the glass. And we will remove these reflections and we will place there correct reflections from the background later on. So as a next step, there are some adjustments in here, like the curves for the ceiling inside. Then there is this brightness, for example, in here. Just zoom in like that. So there is this use chair. With a brush, I painted the adjustment layer in here. So it's the brightness. Then there are some curves, which are mainly the reflections in there, and some other adjustments. These are some basic adjustments which are used, let's say, in general. These are not applied to a specific layer of post-production. These are applied for the complete rendering, which was done in V-Ray. And right after that, this doesn't have to be perfect. And right after that, we start adding the assets. As you can see, there are a lot of them, but I'll show you quickly how it works. So you don't have to worry also to experiment with the layers. So don't worry to load there a lot of photos and try which of them is correct, which of them suits better the rendering. And so first of all, as you can see, I imported this photo, which is some kind of a road in here with the grass on the side. I was quite satisfied with it, so I created the mask and I removed the unnecessary part in there. First of all, I thought, okay, I'm fine with it, and in here I'll just add some, let's say, a bush or something. I'll add some more asphalt in there. It's not a problem. But then I realized, okay, it's a good road, but considering this is a forest house, there should be something, you know, more natural, not this way. So I tried to search for something else in our repository, and I found some other textures. So I think these are taken in High Tatras by our colleague Lukáš. So thanks for these photos, of course. As you can see, I really simply assembled them to match the perspective, and just then I started to apply some adjustments. And for example, as you can see for this last layer enabled, there are some basic adjustments like brightness, levels, and levels again. Some of these last layers were added later when the post-production was almost done, so that's why this may look a little bit dark for you, but I already know that this last adjustment was added when the grass was added in this side. So don't worry to get back to the old layers at any time and add some more adjustments and play with it whenever you need and whenever you want. Right now I enabled some adjustments for the bottom of the slab because it got rendered pretty dark and I needed to create some light in there. There's this displacement rock texture, for example, here, so you can see that. It's the same one as in here, but it doesn't look that nice. Never mind. So as a next step, okay. So what is also important, once you bring in any texture, okay, I'll just disable this clipping in here. Now once you bring in a texture and you want to fit it directly to the environment, and you can see it's lighter or darker, you'll have to create some adjustment. So in this case, let me create the levels, and as a very first step, always remember to create a clipping mask. That means you will clip this adjustment only for the layer below, which means there is this little icon in the properties. So if you click that one, you can see there is this little arrow added in here, and that means, that indicates the adjustment will be used only for the layer which is under the adjustment. That means if I move the slider, you can see I'm adjusting only the layer below. So this is how it works. What you can also do, you don't have to click this icon. You can also go with your mouse pointer in between these layers, hold left out and click in between them, and it's clicked again. Okay, so I'll just remove it and I'll enable these clippings back again. Okay, let's move a little bit up. As you can see, right now I should be adding the back texture in there, but I'll leave it for later. Okay, these are some reflections. I'll add them later as well. And there is this very important part, which are trees and grass and so on, or the foliage. So the trees. So once we import the photo, anyway, the original photo looks like this. And again, this is the photo from Hajtatras by Lukáš. What I usually do when we have some sunny photo with a lot of blue sky behind the tree and behind the tree line and so on, I use some simple tricks which can be found also on in tutorial on FlyingArchitecture, how to mask the trees out of the photos. But in this particular case, I couldn't use these quick adjustments to create the mask automatically, and I had to do it by hand. So what was the easiest way for me? Let me just duplicate this. Sorry. Like that. Okay. So it's duplicated. Let me remove all of these adjustments. Delete. Let me remove the mask. Delete. So as you can see, this is the original photo and nothing special. So if you have to mask these things just by hand, create a new layer, place it under the photo, fill it with like 50% gray. Okay, fill the layer. Go back to the original photo, create the mask, take the brush, and you can try out how the masking works. Okay, this should be okay. We are creating the mask in here. As you can see, by holding left out and clicking into mask, you can see how the mask looks like. So let's get back to the photo. And let's adjust the brush. So window brush. We are going to pick a basic brush from here, which should be located somewhere in here. Okay, there are a lot, yeah, in here. Is this one? It's a basic Photoshop brush. I think you all should have this one in there. So first of all, as you can see, this is a preview for the brush. First of all, you can just rotate the brush so we narrow it, as you can see right now. The edges of this brush are still really narrow and smooth, and we don't want that. So let's just create, again, shape dynamics, scattering, and move some sliders to the right. Angle jitter with scattering, scatter just a little bit. And as you can see, the edge already looks much better. It looks rough, which is much better for the bark in here. So let's create the mask. First of all, just click in here, hold shift and click in there, and as you can see, the edge is created automatically. So if I do that several times for the edges in there, it's true I removed some details, but I can still get back to them. Oops, sorry. Yeah. So you can create these edges in a very simple way, like that. Okay. And of course, just after that, you can take the larger brush and remove the rest of the image. Okay, so I'll just remove both of these right now, enable back the tree in here, and as you can see, I've got a lot of adjustments in there. Why? The reason is to match the lighting from the rendering. It's because there was the sunlight coming from the right side, and I want to fit the tree into the environment. So first of all, have a look at the brightness. So what's happening? I created the right part of the tree a bit lighter. If I hold Alt and click into the mask, you can see there is this blurry edge in here, which says the transition between the part where it's appearing and not appearing is blurry. So that means if I zoom in, if I enable and disable it, it's nice and smooth. And the very same thing for the curves. These curves are making the bark on the lighter side a bit warmer. So as you can see, the original photo is not corresponding with its color, with the color of the facade, which is nice and warm from the sun. So I want to match it also for the unlit side of the tree. So that's why I used curves for that. How I reach that effect is through the drop-down window in here. I switch to render, move the curve a bit up, and for blue, move the curve a bit down, so you can easily play with the colors. And again, I'm using the mask to use these curves only for the unlit part of the tree. Then I'm going to recreate the shadow of the tree with the curves again, but the mask is, in this case, the mask is inverted, as you can see. If I click into it, you can see the colors are inverted. And then some more adjustments for some darker shadows, some levels to darken the tree much more. And what is very important in here, I don't do that too often, but in this case, just good useful. I also added one more photo about this original tree to add some more texture to it and to create the light a bit more natural. So this is how the light for the tree was created. And as you can see, the comparison in between these two effects, sorry, it's without the effect and with the effect, it's really visible. So you don't have to spend, let's say, hours and hours browsing online to search for perfectly unlit trees and grass and so on. You can always recreate the light in Photoshop. It's not that hard. If you are skilled enough, this could be done, let's say, in 3 or 5 minutes. So you can do that with several assets and you are done. As you can see, there is this little body in there as well. So some color adjustments. Okay, it was the tree in the front. If we enable the trees in the front again, it is this one. Again, as you can see, we enabled some adjustments and it fits much better. Mostly what is really important is this warm light coming from the right side. Okay, let me enable the grass in here. With the levels I created, as you can see also, there's this mask which was created for the shadow part in here. Again, some shadows, some warm light on top of the grass, some brightness, some curves, hue saturation, brightness, curves, and levels in general. So in this way, we brought the grass more into the environment by adjusting its appearance. This is some kind of a stone wall I found also in our repository with some basic adjustments like curves and levels. We just put it back to the shadows. And as you can see, there is this unpleasant part up in here which we need to cover as well. So there is another photo reference, and with a very same approach, we created the grass edge in here, as I showed you before. So it's pretty easy to match it. And also, sorry, yeah, what we only do, is that we only created a little bit darker part in the bottom of this grass in here. Okay, let's get back to the left part in here. As you can see, it's still not really nice, but we don't mind. We'll just add some more textures. Okay, this looks much better. Mostly the right part, but I'm not still satisfied with the left part. So let's just create one more layer above it, and let's bring some color adjustments to bring it together. And as the last thing for the front part, I guess it's this tree, and again with the very same approach, with several adjustments, just create some light on it. Important for this one was to bring the realistic shadows from the cantilever. So as you can see, this shadow from the cantilever casts first shadow from the ceiling and second shadow from the floor in here. And I wanted to bring it also on a tree somehow. So as you can see, if I enable the mask in here, as you can see, I created the mask only for the unlit part on the tree. As you can see, this is completely uniform, but when I enable the curves, as you can see, the light is created only where it's supposed to be, and again the darks with the curves are created only where the shadows should be. So this is how I try to bring the tree to the position. Okay. As I showed you before, in a 3D where I use the fillet for the blocks, and I told you that I forgot to create the fillet for my final rendering in here, so I had to recreate it in post-production. So it was done in a very simple way, just by creating some strips, some very simple lines in here, and then adding the effect of bevel and emboss. It's just a very simple effect. I know this is not the best way, but I didn't want to create a new rendering and wait a couple more hours for the render and edit the post-production again. So I just put there a new layer, created a few lines, created this bevel and emboss, and it should remind you the light and shadow on the glass panels. Okay, when talking about the environment, it's always important for the house to sit in the environment actually, and also with the shadows and also with the reflections. The reflections in the windows are very important to match the environment, and always try to bring new reflections in Photoshop so you match it more properly. First of all, there is this reflection coming from the right side in there with some adjustments, and there are some more reflections in the windows up there. Okay, and as you can see, the last reflection back in there, and there is also the specific folder for the cantilever reflection. So there is some kind of a texture again. By the way, this texture, as you can see, it's set to multiply mode, opacity 55. If you switch to normal and 100, as you can see, it's a photo from the background actually. I just moved it and rotated it a little bit so it doesn't fit exactly with the background. So in this way you can just get easily the reflection. The multiply blending mode is not mandatory for you. You should rather experiment with it. This is not the only correct blending mode for the reflections, of course. I also tried several of these, and with multiply I decided this is the best one of those. But maybe for some other scenes, some other blending modes would be better. I guess as the last part for adding some assets into the image is to add some layers for the background in there. Should be okay. Yes, exactly. So there's some shadow created. Okay. This is the fog, the environment fog. There are two ways how to create environment fog. One of them is you go to masks and take the Z depth and take it out. It's like this. And if you enable it, you can see, sorry, okay, like that. As you can see, it should work for what we need. The only thing is we have to mask out this part from here, or maybe you can just switch the color and, sorry, you can just paint the black, paint the white into the layer, DX, like that. Okay, let's do that. So we just cover this part. Okay. As the next step, let's bring some more contrast to the image and flip it to the layer. So like that. Okay. And if you switch from normal to screen, it's going to filter out the black color, and it's going to be shown only where the white is. And if you lower the opacity, you can see it's somehow working. It's not the best, of course, so that's why most of the time we create the depth just by drawing it into the empty layer in here, in the structure. In this way you can create, as you can see, not really perfect Z depth, but if you want to, you can at any time, you can just create some mask, you can mask out some little problems in here, and it's going to work for you flawlessly, of course, as you can see like that. Okay, okay, and this should work for you in most cases. And let's say if we increase the contrast again, we can just play with it a little bit more, and also with the opacity and so on. It's still better than nothing. But if you want to create this Z-depth layer only in a specific places, it's always good to create a new layer, like I did in here. It's the light blue tone, and it's set to normal opacity 100, and nothing important happens there. But then I created a mask, and as you can see, the mask is created only for the parts where I consider it to be important. So as you can see, I don't cover the whole background with the white color, but I cover only the important parts in there. Of course, let me just lower the opacity, and there is some more mask in there in the background. So this is how it's working. If you just enable and disable it, so this is the difference. Okay, and I also, for some reason, added the flare effect in here, but it's really unnecessary, so I'll just keep it up for now. As the next step, we are going into the light section in here, and I'll enable the first layer. As you can see, some of the light painting on the trees was done in this layer. I'll show you how the mask looks like. So, first of all, there is this layer which is set to overlay mode with some lower opacity like 70%. Then you create the mask, and you can just easily, oops, sorry, it's overlay, okay, and when you are in the mask, you take the brush, and you can very easily paint the light. If this is just too much, you can just lower the opacity, and you can just remove the effect from there, or draw it with some nicer values in there. Okay, so this should be done. Then there are some little glows. As you can see, these are used mostly for the metal parts. So as you can see, it's in here, and also some of them are on the little assets in the front of the cantilever. What is very important is this light, which is very subtle. Then there is a lens flare, of course. As the next step, I usually darken the bottom of the image a little bit with a little gradient, so we focus more on the upper parts of the composition. And then I've got here the group, which holds some more layers. If I enable it, you can see there are some guard rays coming through the trees. If I disable them, and I can show you how they were created. Just create a new layer, take the brush, make it a little bit yellowish, okay, and just paint the light. Then you go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, just blur it a little bit more, and then filter, blur, motion blur, and try to match the direction of the light. Here we can blur it more, okay, and then you go to, let's say, screen or overlay, or what fits your image better. Lower the opacity to something really small, and if you just enable, disable it, you can see the difference. And then with holding Alt, you can just create several layers, and some of them might be distorted to get some, let's say, sharper effects. Okay, like that, and maybe with a higher opacity. So it really depends on what you want to achieve in the image. I'll enable the rest of these. In the same way, I created all of these guard rays. And then when they were created, as you can see, they are getting in front of the tree, but I want them behind. So I just create a mask for the whole group and paint some brush strokes in there, so I mask them out. Okay, and as the last layer for the light is vignette, and vignette is just a simple layer which is completely black. As you can see, opacity is 42. If I switch it back to 100, it's completely black. So if you just go back to 40 and enable back the mask, which looks like this, we are enabling the vignette like that. And as a very last group of adjustments, they are called final changes. I usually create here some adjustments for the overall composition in the very end of the image. So for example, I just wanted to darken the bottom of the image a little bit more. Then talking about the overall image, I enhanced the contrast. As the next step, I desaturated the whole image a little bit to bring the colors together, and then I used selective color and switched from reds to neutrals and played a little bit with these sliders in there to enhance the overall feeling of the image. And as the very last step, when I already felt that the image should be okay, but I would expect a bit darker front part of the image. As you can see, I created some hand painting mask again with the brightness contrast as the very last step in here. Okay, once the image is done, when you feel the image should be okay for publishing or for the client and so on, you can just take all of these layers. I usually duplicate them and merge them, of course, to flatten it. Okay, so once it's flattened, as the next step, we're going to filter and lens correction. Okay. Okay, this is the first time I'm seeing this. Virtual tiles. Okay, oh, I can see I allow this space. Okay, never mind. I'll just enable the last layer in here, which was created using filter and lens correction. and in there I just created some chromatic aberration for the edges, so it appears a little bit more like a photo, not like rendering, and it usually adds some more realistic effects. But remember, this is not going to add some realism when the rendering is not good enough. It's not going to save the rendering. It can only enhance it, but not save it. So always remember to keep all the parts of your work really good, and do not just say yourself that okay, I'll just do that in Photoshop and then you will forget it, or maybe if you are lacking, let's say, the skills in some part of the post-production, you won't have a chance to recreate the effect. For example, in here with the wooden shingles on the facade, I knew I can do that in Photoshop, but I wasn't really sure if the effect would be the same, so that's why I decided to use the displacement for the rendering to get these really nice and sharp shadows, dark shadows under the shingles in here. Anyway, as you can see, I showed you how to create this insane detail for the windows. It's not really visible in here, but for sure I'll be working a bit more with the scene, and I will also make some close-ups later when I will have some more time. But what is really important for you to know, that if you will want to work with the post-production of this image, you can just follow FlyingArchitecture. I'm pretty sure you know the website flyingarchitecture.com, and there is this section with tutorials in there, and shortly I'm going to publish also this tutorial where I will be talking about all the necessary steps for modeling, for rendering, for post-production, so you will be able to follow it. Besides the tutorial itself, I would like to show you that I already prepared some more renderings for you, so you will be able to download some other views of the project, and you can just download it and import it into Photoshop, and you can work with it, and you can follow the complete tutorial to recreate the scene in your computer. So you can have a different point of view with the very same effects. It will be all uploaded to FlyingArchitecture, and besides this one you can find there a lot of other tutorials. For example, the ones I mentioned before, which is creating custom brush in Photoshop, or maybe there is this masking of foliage. So if you are eager to know how to mask a tree in Photoshop in 10 seconds, you can just follow this tutorial. It's free, of course, so you can just follow it, and you can learn how to mask it in a really short time. There are also some modeling tutorials, a lot of really interesting stuff, which is let's say more complicated and with some more advanced surfacing and so on. And there are also some post-production tutorials. I'll show you directly. So this one is the modeling one with a lot of details for 3D for Rhino. So if you want to learn something more about modeling, about the furniture and so on, you can just become a member and follow this tutorial. So if you start the tutorial, you will see the step-by-step tutorial for every single step you will need to create this image. Sorry, this 3D model, of course.
That was
okay.
That was great, Matush. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for addressing everybody to your website, where there's a lot of fun things, I say.
Yeah, and I would also like to say a little bit about the workshop we are going to organize this year. There was already this question in the very beginning, but I guess there are some more people listening right now. So I would just to point them directly to artc.it website. It's a website of my friend Giancarlo Di Marco, which is organizing this workshop in Rome. And there is this post in the middle, in the top middle part, sorry, where you can subscribe already for the tutorial, which is going to, for the workshop, where you can attend on February 6, 7, 8 in Rome. So we'll be looking for you to meet you there. If you want to know more about this post-production, we will get through much more steps during these 3 days. So we'll get through much more and deeper stuff than we had a chance to go through today.
That's awesome. Everybody just go to Rome. It's a win-win, right? So we went a little bit over with the time, and there are a lot of questions. So what I'm thinking is I will save the question and send them to you, Matusz, and then maybe over the weekend when you have a little chance, you can write answers, and I will publish them on our blog, on the Novage blog next week. What do you say? Would you be up for it?
Yeah, that will be much better.
Thank you so much, because otherwise we'll take so much time, and we'll be here for a while. So thank you so much. This was really exciting. I will take over the screen now. I hope everybody will go and check out Flying Architecture's webpage. A lot of things to have fun with. Can you see my screen now? Let's see.
Yes, I can see that.
Okay, great. So I would like to thank everybody from attending from the Novage team, and I would like to remind you to visit our page at novage.com and check out V-Ray 2.0 for Rhino, Rhino 5, and Photoshop. We have it all. As a one-stop shop, Novage is the best way to buy design software online. And for information on the latest specials and new releases, join the Novage network on Facebook, Google+, and Twitter, and subscribe to the Novage blog, especially since we'll be waiting to publish all the answers to the questions you submitted today for Matusz. The upcoming webinar will be on Autodesk Fusion 360. Find out why more and more professionals rave about Fusion 360. To rewatch today's webinar, or previous ones, check out our Novage YouTube and Vimeo channels. Our webinar playlist has webinars for every software taste. I am recording the webinar, and I'll put it up as soon as possible. I know some complain about a little lag during the presentation, but I didn't see much on my screen, so hopefully the recording will be perfect. I want to thank everybody again for joining us. Have a great day, and thank you so much, Matusz. This was a fabulous performance, and you are indeed the Michelangelo of architecture rendering and visualization. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for such nice words.
And hopefully we'll have another webinar together again. I hope you save a little time for us in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Of course. Just let me know later and we can talk about it.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day or night. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
Bye.